We were just relaxing in the sun, sunbathing, and all of a sudden, from across the lake over there, you think I'm crazy for saying this, but this is what we actually saw. The entire thing happened within 2 minutes. At first, it looked like a balloon. At first, I was convinced it was a balloon. I thought somebody was having a party. Then, as soon as it came slightly closer, I was like, maybe it's not a party balloon, it looks like a weather balloon. And it started coming closer, closer, right from there. Right from there, came almost over here. As soon as it was over here, it did not move like a weather balloon. It wasn't moving like a weather balloon. It was moving just like a drone, somebody flying a drone, just like... Until it came really close, right over there. About 100 meters before that hump, there's a small little hill. And the moment it reached there, and our eyes were all locked on the balloon. And as soon as it reached the ground, it just went shoo, shoo, shoo. We looked at each other. I was like, that is not a balloon. That just maneuvered itself and landed over there. We ran immediately. Our first instinct was to just run. So an object that is about 10 feet big
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, the podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. I'm your weathered host, Tyler Bentz, and this is your other host,
Woody Brown.
Hey, pal.
Well, listeners, I don't know if you can tell, but instead of Tyler being our host this week, I've invited this 75-year-old beautiful young lady. Now, the downside is she's been smoking since she was 3 years old.
And has like a stoma.
Yeah, and so she's pretending to be Tyler, but I think, you can hear the difference in the voice there.
Yeah.
Certainly been smoking since 3 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways.
Wait, is that the right word, stoma?
I think it is. You also said paranormal weird again. It's like no.
I did not.
It's all good.
It's like me saying
listeners can rewind it and listen, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And we're not here to make fun of Tyler today.
That's rude.
But what we are here to do is, look, when we took you to Roopkund Lake in last episode, and if you haven't...
Right by the water.
If you haven't listened to that episode, we really highly encourage you to do so. It's not necessary to do so before this episode, but it might provide a little context, because here's the thing. Just when you thought that we were going to be out of the Himalayas, we're going to pull you right back in, okay?
Yeah, it's a fascinating place.
Today's episode was born out of, we thought we were going to be covering one thing, and then, like so many of these things that we cover, as we began to research it, we uncovered the fact that there is so much crazy stuff. I mean, absolute rad strangeness in this area. So, without further ado, I think I'm just going to dive in, dude, if that's okay with you.
Let's get into it.
This is something that has been buried in government reports, tucked away in the far reaches of the Himalayas, and has experts from so many different sort of categories, scientists, sociologists, anthropologists, and everything, still scratching their heads. I want everybody to picture this, okay? You're on a scientific expedition, miles away from any kind of civilization. It's beautiful. You're trekking through the rugged mountains of Himachal Pradesh, India. The air is thin. Your breathing feels heavier. We kind of talked about that too, Tyler and I's experiences.
My breathing is, I'm on death's door.
Yeah, we're going to get him an oxygen tank here shortly. We've got it ordered. DoorDash, apparently, they'll do that.
My Sherpa has me in the back of a rickshaw.
But, this area, this landscape, this scenery is just breathtaking. It's nothing short of just epic.
Mm-hmm.
This is the place where legends are born. Ancient myths about fairies and spirits still kind of echo through the valleys.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2004, something happened out there that even the most hardened of skeptics couldn't ignore. This is where today's story begins, at Samudra Tapu. It's a deglaciated valley, 17,000 feet above sea level. Now that is up there.
That's high, yeah.
And in case you're wondering, it's about, from where we talked about last episode, Rupkund Lake, that area, this is about 201 or so miles away from there.
Mm-hmm.
In the Lahal Spiti district of the Himachal Pradesh. Now, as I always do, I got to say up front, I apologize for any mispronunciations of some of these town, city, and regional names. So my apologies. No offense to our fans and listeners out in India. So it's 2004. A 5-member team of glaciologists and geologists were conducting research in this remote part of the world, kind of just minding their own business, doing what they do. They got their clipboards out. They're taking down data. They're doing all this. And all of a sudden they stumbled upon something that, again, to this day, hasn't really been fully explained. It was 6:45 in the morning, September 27th, 2004. That's almost exactly, minus a few weeks, 20 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, pretty cool.
The scientists spotted something that looked like it was straight out of the X-Files. They spotted a humanoid UFO. That's correct, folks. You heard it right. Tyler mentioned it. A humanoid UFO.
A flying humanoid.
Now, this wasn't a quick glance or a blink and you'll miss it kind of moment. The encounter, now this is just mind-blowing to me. The encounter lasted 40 minutes. Long enough for them to snap some photos that you can kind of see online. Well, I'm sure we're going to have it on our Instagram and share it there. But really long enough for them to get some relatively clear-ish. I mean, as you know, anytime you zoom in with a stupid cell phone camera, it gets all pixelated and stupid. But long enough for them to kind of really study from a distance what they were seeing. The scientists were packing up their camp when a porter suddenly yelled, "Sir, the snowman is coming. Now, Tyler, I don't know about you, dude.
Scary.
And I'm sure we're going to kind of get in this a little bit, but we're in a region at this point where there's not just UFO activity, but there's also cryptid activity. And if someone said, and again, when they say, when I said porter, it's somebody that is hired to help, carry the gear.
Kind of like a Sherpa, right?
But yeah, like a Sherpa.
Yeah.
This person suddenly says, "Sir, the snowman is coming." Now, dude, I'm in the middle of the Himalayas. I am definitely going to stop what I'm doing, but I'm also going to be pretty scared.
Yeah. Suddenly, I
Interested,
immediately
but
think
pretty scared.
of the Michelin Man.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because as you look at this picture, folks, first, it's just hard to believe that they were able to capture something like that. What they saw, though, wasn't a Yeti. It wasn't a snowman. It wasn't Jack Frost. It wasn't the Michelin Man. Instead, it's almost described as like a robot figure floating just above the ground.
Yeah.
And moving toward their camp.
You know what it kind of reminds me also of that recent UFO footage that shows like the what is it called? I always forget this name. It's like in Star Wars, it's like the
the Imperial probe droid.
Probe droid.
Yeah.
I always want to say protocol droid, and I know that's wrong, but
Protocol is like what C-3PO is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, with like these weird like balloons sort of attached to it almost.
Kind of, man. It's also like just this weird, so it's like this oblong, about 3 to 4 feet high, cylindrical head, and like, just like you said, some like balloon-like attachments. It even had hands and legs, which is kind of what really throws you off. It seemed like it was walking, sort of placing its steps just like a human would. Now, at this point, listeners, I'm sure you're kind of thinking, maybe, whoa, what? Okay, we got a robot balloons, not balloons. It's floating. It's kind of moving towards them. It's moving its feet as though it's walking. It's in the Himalayas. Hold up. Trust me. It gets even weirder, radder, stranger. The team's excitement must have actually kind of either spooked this thing or at least caused it to notice them, because when they started to approach it, the object stopped in its tracks. After standing still for a few seconds, it turned around and began ascending the mountain at an impossible steep angle. We're talking about like a 70-degree slope here. Something that a human or even a man-made machine kind of struggled to climb. Now, as if that wasn't enough, and this is one of my favorite parts here, not just because I just watched an octopus documentary, the color of the object changed.
Yeah.
It started out as white, but then when the sun hit it, it turned into this like black color before then going back to the white color. After hovering for a few minutes, it silently vanished into the sky.
Which it is interesting that you say like the color change, because like that video that I was references with, like that looks sort of like the probe droid, it also was able to like change its like heat signature and like color when they were, because they were viewing it through like thermal, I guess. And so like it's like as it's moving, it's like changing its like heat signature from like extremely cold to extremely hot. So I wonder if it wasn't viewed through like thermal goggles, if it would just appear like the color was changing, like what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Another thing to think about too is like I kind of mentioned a little bit is that, as we know, even in the biological Earth animal population, there are animals such as an octopus that will change its colors based on mood, trying to camouflage, trying to scare. And, it's almost like an intimidation technique.
Oh, yeah.
It's also sometimes a communication technique. So was something like that going on?
Oh, like some sort of like signaling kind of to another one maybe?
Yeah, exactly. So there's this really cool documentary on, I think it's on Disney. Not sure, but it's National Geographic essentially, and it's about octopi.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's really cool because you get to see all these cool octopus behaviors, and just it's just really, really neat. And just like the level of camouflage for some of these things is just insane. Anyhow, that's what I thought of at first. Another thing that I thought of just out of the gate as I was reading about this is, okay, and the funny thing is I'm reading it and sort of quickly forgetting that this happened in 2004 because I was looking at it through the lens of it's 2024.
Right.
We've got incredible drone technology now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, is it a different, group that's just kind of messing with these guys? Is it the IT guys back at home that are just messing with these scientists? Who knows, right?
Which, by the way, I guess you could say that, like, because like military or even like black project stuff, they always say it's like 60 to 80 years advanced from like anything that's available commercially.
Sure.
So like, I guess you could say that maybe it was something like along those lines, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly on the list of, hey, here are some possibilities of what this could have been.
But the location.
That's where my mind went initially.
Yeah.
Well, and we can talk about the location, why I think if we're going down that road in terms of it being human piloted, we'll say, maybe not from within, but
right.
potentially also, but just no matter what, some kind of human technology and human involvement. What about this area makes it such that they would need to be there other than just like these scientists who are testing glaciers and stuff, right?
Right.
So I'm sure we're going to kind of dig into that in a minute as well. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about who these people are. These guys and gals are scientists who are seasoned glaciologists, geologists. These are people who deal with the harshest elements in remote locations. Kind of like, in my opinion, sort of the rock stars of the science world. You know what I mean? They're not just kind of like
in the lab
reading the data. They're going out there and they're in these harsh conditions, gathering the data. And it's just like, it reminds me of, the kind of cool that I would think scientists were as a kid watching Jurassic Park or something, Anyhow, they know the difference between a weather balloon and something totally bizarre.
Right, right.
When you look at the photos, they showed something that, again, at first glance, does kind of look like a bunch of balloons, but the scientists insisted that it had complex movements that balloons caught in a mountain draft simply wouldn't or couldn't make necessarily.
Yeah, there's definitely some sort of like control to this thing. Like some sort of intelligent control. Yeah.
Yeah. Now this report, well, I'll say this. A lot of times, most specifically in the past, in our country, for example, but just globally, something like this would quickly kind of get brushed under the rug publicly. We wouldn't hear about it necessarily. It's a little different now, but 2004, I don't know. Well, it was passed along top government agencies in India, including ISRO, which stands for the Indian Space Research Organization, and even made it up to their parliament. Despite all that, though, no one was able to offer like a definitive explanation. Was it some kind of unmanned aerial vehicle? Maybe something launched from the not-so-far Chinese border? Was it a spy aircraft or whatever? Could it have been extraterrestrial? This mystery still lingers over all this, and here's what's crazy too, man. The story doesn't end there.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
This podcast is supported by FX's English Teacher, a new comedy from executive producers of What We Do in the Shadows and Baskets. English Teacher follows Evan, a teacher in Austin, Texas, who learns if it's really possible to be your full self at your job while often finding himself at the intersection of the personal, professional, and political aspects of working at a high school. FX's English Teacher is now streaming on Hulu. All new Mondays on FX.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
It's a pretty cool place if you're a Martian.
Or a vampire. You think you really know what's happening around here, don't you?
Is anyone out there?
We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show.
And as soon as it reached the ground, it just went shoo, shoo, shoo. We looked at each other. I was like, that is not a balloon. That just maneuvered itself and landed over there. We ran immediately. Our first instinct was to just run all the way to that, and it's probably about 100 meters, right? You can see it, it's about 100 meters over there. And we reached there, and I thought, it's crashed right there, right? Where would it go? But there was nothing over there. There was absolutely nothing.
He came back and told me I was there, and then we realized that thing wasn't small. It was like bigger than me.
Exactly.
It was really big.
So an object that is about 10 feet big, what the hell happened? Like, where would it go? I mean, we would find it. It was right there. We saw it land over there, and it wasn't there.
Okay, now at this point, I'm sure every one of you is thinking, I have lost my mind completely. So when this actually happened with us back in 2015, the rational part of me at that point totally wrote off the fact that it was a UFO or a random thing that we saw. We weren't really thinking about it. It was only once I came back to Manali and this thought was still there in my head that we saw something, I went onto the internet and I researched. I just typed Chandratal UFO thinking that something might pop up. And comes along one crazy article on indiatoday.in written in 2012, but about an incident that happened in 2004 about a bunch of geologists and glaciologists, a 5-member team, and they were associated with the Indian Space Research Organization doing a research over there. And these guys had a huge encounter with the same thing. And why I say the same thing is because they actually took a picture of it. When I saw the picture, I was like, damn, that is exactly the thing that we saw. And that's when my head flipped, because it reinstates what I actually saw over there. Because till now I was thinking, okay, maybe we saw something, maybe it's something in our own heads. But no, a lot of people have seen this. And I've researched more, and there have been over 3,000 sightings of similar objects all around the world.
Whatever it was a physical object. So it had to land somewhere. And that was the rational me saying, okay, if it landed here, obviously it's got to be here, right? It's a balloon, probably it's stuck on a piece of rock, or how far could have it gone? Like, there's so many rocks over here. Where did it go? That was the big question. Where did it go? And I think about this till date. And I mean, even after reading everything online, it's even more like mind-boggling, because so many people have seen stuff like this. Similar to me, a couple of years later, my friend Deela and her brother and her full family were here, and they were here during the night, and they had another similar interesting story to say. So I think it's better if we go to that spot and let her explain.
So we were camping around that area, like a little bit above the lake, and there was it was quite dark, it was already quite late, and there was a couple of Punjabi guys that camped near us, and then they got really sick and whatever. So Raghu and me, we decided we had to like drive them and drop them lower down. So in the middle of the night, we packed the stuff into our car and we're like driving back, and it's quite dark, and it's like, I mean, you couldn't really make out the mountains, but yeah, anyway, so we're driving down this road, and in the middle, like, I looked to the left, and just about here, like somewhere up here, it was either this area or maybe slightly further, like there, I see like it looked pretty small. It was like a small, round, sort of glowing ball that was just like floating in the sense like it was moving quite fast, like moving across the mountain quite fast. And at first I thought like, oh my god, there's a road up there, so it's obviously like a car light or something, but it was going like in a straight line, and it was moving across too fast. And then like, because we'd driven here earlier, so I was like, there isn't a road up there, like there's only this one road that comes up from this side. So anyway, so it zooms up, and then I'm still looking at it, and suddenly it starts like shaking quite violently, and I can't see it anymore. And because the guys behind us were pretty altitude, like they had got altitude sickness, and they were quite delirious and they weren't making sense. So I was just like, maybe I am also like out of it a bit. And I looked at Raghu, and he was driving, and I said, Raghu, I feel like I might be sick as well. And then he's like, no, I just saw that too. And then I was like, what? Like the ball thing or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I just saw it. And then we were so freaked out that we didn't really want to keep talking about it, because we were like all alone. It was pitch black, like there was no one around and stuff. So it's just a bit freaky. So we just sort of didn't talk about it or whatever. It was a really weird experience.
All right, fast forward a few years, and not just like the story that you just heard, but a lot more UFO sightings started to happen in the Ladakh region, just north of where the original humanoid UFO was spotted.
And also, by the way, this is in a callback to our previous episode. This is all within the area of the lake, the Skeleton Lake or the Mystery Lake.
Mm-hmm. And between August and October, more than 100 UFOs were reported by none other than the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force. These weren't just lights in the sky either. They were described as yellow, luminous spheres hovering for hours at a time before disappearing. Now, again, let me paint a picture for you, I guess, geographically. Ladakh is a place where the Indian military keeps a sharp eye on the border with China. It's remote, high altitude, not exactly where you expect mysterious orbs to casually be floating around, or, dare I say, exactly where I would expect them to be floating around.
Yeah.
The soldiers who saw these things were trained observers, and they took the sightings seriously enough to report them to the highest levels of the Indian government. And then here's kind of what really gets me about this specifically. The Indian Army, along with scientists from the Indian Astronomical Observatory and the Defense Research and Development Organization, couldn't figure out what these objects were. They even deployed a mobile radar unit and a drone to try and track them. But guess what? Nothing showed up on the radar, and the drone lost sight of the object when it reached its maximum altitude.
You know, I wonder also, like, talking about, you know, that probe droid looking UFO, I wonder if whatever that thing was doing in, like, the thermal imaging, I wonder if that's how it's, like, eluding these, like, drones.
Radar and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of
well, and I
them.
think, like, their speed and their capabilities surpass, especially at that time, whatever military drones the Indian Army was using, or Air Force, whatever, to kind of track them down and follow it. Now, it is interesting because of the location, how close it is to the Chinese border, and then our own sort of brush with spy balloons. Either, what was that, like, has it been a year since all that happened?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I can't, I don't know. It was recently.
Yeah. You know, because of that sort of proximity, it does initially make me think, okay, well, was it some sort of military test? I mean, because the only thing I can think of, if that were true, would be kind of one or two causes for it to be that area where stuff is being tested. If, again, this is a man-made thing. Reason number one would be there's something in that area that they're trying to find out about.
Yeah. Right.
Reason number two would be that it's remote enough that they think, oh, well, nobody's going to be around here. We can kind of like blow stuff up by accident if we need to. There's not a whole lot of, because we're talking miles and miles from civilization.
Well, and also, like, I originally thought, oh, well, that doesn't quite add up as far as the drone or balloon thing, because, like, those are typically pretty high altitude. But then you start thinking, well, this peak is like 14,000 feet.
17,000.
Oh, 17,000. Jeez.
Yeah.
Up. So, you know.
So if it drifted over there.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm with you on that one. Again, my rationale would be like, okay, if it is a possibility that this thing, let's say it is floating over there, it is some sort of weather data collecting device. And it just happens to be there, and then these guys witness it, and then it just shoots up and goes away. The only kind of feasible explanation that I could think of, that doesn't mean it's the only one, but it's the only one that I could think of, was this. It malfunctions. It happens to kind of float down. For whatever reason, it regains signal. These guys happen to be there at the right time. They witness it, and it's just like, bum, 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 and it, you know, goes back up.
I mean, but the video, like, the guys claim that, like, it was there for 40 minutes. And so, and they're, like, watching it sort of move around and stuff.
Let me ask you a question. And like, truthfully, I think everybody knows what my answer would be already at this point. If you're a longtime listener of the show,
time travel.
No. Well, of course, I think that's what it is. No, my question is, put yourself in their shoes. It's there for 40 minutes. Are you're trying to get closer to it? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But real quick though, weren't they? I I'm trying to remember.
Basically, I think where they were
like separated by a lake, though, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah. And so like essentially, it was gonna take them quite a while to reach it. So 40 minutes sounds like a long time, but when you're in the mountains, you know, you're not even gonna be able to get a mile. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And so basically, they weren't able to reach it. They could just kind of observe it from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing, again, looking at the picture of this thing, is there is like an element of it that seems maybe not even white, almost like reflective, really. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm typically on the show the true believer, and I do fully believe that this is something else. You know, I don't personally believe it's a drone. Not to like give away the goose, you know, before the end, but I do think it's something weird. However, I can see how debunkers would say, "Oh, well, they're so far away. They're using, you know, whatever recording technology was available in 2004. Therefore, it's going to create like artifacts. You're also dealing with like you're up on a mountain, so like the sun is able to like reflect. So I do kind of get it does make the situation a little difficult.
Another thing that kind of muddies it up a little bit is that since then, there have been a lot of similar sort of sightings.
Right.
I mean, all the way up into 2023, 2024, where people have been like, oh man, this is a, you know, kind of superhero flying around or something going on. And then they'll go to it and they find out basically that it is, you know, it is actually a balloon or a spy balloon or a weather balloon even. And so some of these remote villages, again, not to sort of discount their own knowledge about this kind of stuff, intelligence even, but some of them, you know, I think there was one in 2023 where it was like, 2021, I think, where this guy mistaked a weather balloon. You know, he's like an elderly farmer. And so just picture yourself, everyone picture your like oldest grandparent and them just being sort of far removed from the things that we have in terms of just being able to watch TV and the news and all of that. And then just seeing something floating around, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, it's something, right?
Well, one of the things too, though, is I think we do need to provide context a little on, you know, going back to the episode when we were talking about the lake, the area that they're in is regarded as like a holy place. And so there's like tons of like anomalous sort of behavior in the, you know, lights and orbs and like all this kind of stuff. So to be honest, like I think contextually seeing it through that lens, it does lend itself to be like, oh, well, of course it's some kind of weird anomalous event, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they've been seeing them for years and years and years.
Right. It's not just one event. It's just many, many years, almost every year probably.
Yeah,
and
probably.
I mean, for this one specific, I feel sad now because like you look at the picture of what the old man farmer thought was an alien. And dude, it's basically like, man, it's not even like in the shape of, it's like, you know, imagine somebody has like a notebook that they wrapped up with like cellophane and a couple like wires and stuff. Poor guy. Anyway, as far as this one goes, it sounds like the plot of a weird sci-fi movie. I mean, to me, it would be pretty horrific to imagine sort of that initial scene of you see this thing, you're just there observing, collecting data, you see this thing floating, it starts coming towards you, then you start, you know, once it kind of quote unquote notices you, it stops, changes colors a couple times, and then is just sitting there floating 3 or 4 feet above the ground, doing weird movements, and then boom, shooting out and shooting away. Like,
and I mean, dude, it's so hard for me for our longtime listeners, you know, because I've mentioned it 100 times, but my own personal sort of orb encounters, it's the exact same thing where there is enough like sentience to where there's something about it to where like, you know that they know that you're looking at them. And it's like, they're able to like like feel it, or I don't know how to explain it. It's just a weird kind of thing. It's like even with mine, like I knew like when I was looking at these things through my periphery that like I just had this like internal knowing that like, okay, if I look at this thing dead on, it's immediately going to know that I'm looking at it. And like tons of UFO stories, you know, ranging back from like 50s and 60s, people have said the same thing. They're like, oh, this thing knew when I was looking at it and it shot off. And so it's the same kind of thing. As soon as I would look at the orbs in my old loft, it would, you know, it would sort of wobble and then kind of like go disappear into the wall. And it's kind of like this.
Right.
It's like as soon as this thing saw that it was being viewed, it did some kind of maneuver, you know, color change, and then it shot off.
It's weird too, because I 100% agree. We oftentimes hear about this kind of stuff with UFOs or just orbs or strange anomalies like that, you know, will-o'-the-wisps, things like that. Can notice when you notice them. There's some ability that we don't know about, some way for them to sort of, I guess, read or sense that. But, you know, it also happens, I was thinking about this, it also happens when we talk about folks who encounter things like the Shadow Man or like any kind of almost potentially, or what they deem as like a spirit encounter.
Like supernatural
or even like, you know, even aliens, man. People will say like, I was looking at it, then it's like it sensed me, looked at me, and then that's the point where it either sort of gets aggressive or gets sort of defensive in that it just kind of goes away.
You know what's interesting, and it's something I just thought of pertaining to this. You know, like when I had my like Shadow Man encounter when I was a kid, there was like everything in me was focused on like not looking directly at it. And so I wonder is that like a mechanism of like, you know, some sort of like impulse control, or is that something kind of embedded in our like
survival DNA?
Yeah, like survival DNA kind of thing of like, oh, I mean, because, you know, in animals, like you shouldn't look anything in, you know, your predator in the eye. You should, you know, that kind of thing. Like, is it linked to that, or is it something with these sort of spiritual or like paranormal, supernatural kind of situations where like there is a knowing that you shouldn't look directly at this thing?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think like sort of the fight or flight sort of response that anybody would have. I mean, some animals and or individuals would have like, you know, they'd probably like flee a lot more often. For a quick example, you. Now, the other type of, like, I would probably fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's a distinction that needs to be said.
You're so dumb.
And then we can move on. So, like, and they're just going to, you know, the alien would come down and be like, oh, boy, we've never seen, maybe he's one of us. His skin is, like, clear. It's translucent.
You're like, it's pretty dark in the basement.
He never gets any sun.
I'm just going to stay up here.
His arms look so weak.
You're so dumb.
No wonder he doesn't wear shorts. Anyway.
Knobby knees.
It's interesting, though, because, like you said, this isn't just like a one-time occurrence. The story that you guys heard earlier was a true eyewitness account from the YouTuber that, I mean, it's a great video. I encourage you guys to watch it. We'll put the link in the show notes because then you can get an idea for the area. I mean, golly, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's something about that remote location that makes these events even scarier. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, hey, if you need help and you're out there, you're not going to really get it, you know?
Yeah, no one can hear you scream in the Himalayas.
Yeah, exactly. Except for the balloon man or whatever it is.
Yeah, that, you know, the funny thing is, to be transparent about the show, so we were originally like, hey, man, there's actually these sightings, you know, that happen in the Himalayas where they're talking about these sort of flying humanoid encounters. And so we were going to like kind of lead off of that because that's something that's always fascinated me are these UFO accounts where they're sort of like flying people. It's like these flying humanoids. But then like the more we looked, the more we were like, man, there's a ton more stuff that we could totally, you know, explore that right in India, right in the Himalayas. I mean, it really is kind of a hot spot sightings.
For sure. And it's not just UFO sightings. Although, before we get into all the other ones, the sort of the adjacent rad strangeness that occurs here, I think we should dive into some of these other sort of UFO sightings outside of, this humanoid UFO.
Mm-hmm.
We will return after these messages.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no man.
Hey, this is Bryce Johnson from the Bigfoot Collectors Club, and you're listening to Tyler and Woody on That Would Be Rad, because that is rad.
So the oldest as far as like a big sighting, was the New Delhi sighting in 1951. Have you looked up this one?
No.
So on March 15th, 1951, George F. Float, a chief aerial engineer, and his two assistants observed a bullet-shaped object appearing from a swirly white cloud near the Delhi Flying Club hangar in New Delhi, India. And so immediately, to me, that's like what is affectionately referred to as the ghost rockets or the ghost ships. Those like sort of cigar-shaped ones, which are interesting because those were like really big in the 50s, 60s, maybe even 40s. The object, approximately 100 feet long, was seen by 17 to 20 people. It moved south, performed a loop, and then continued southwest until it disappeared. The object's speed was estimated to be 3 times faster than a British Vampire jet's cruising speed, and the sighting lasted about 7 minutes. So that's pretty cool.
Man. Yeah.
I mean, like 20 people are sitting around like staring at this thing, and it's just doing all these like cool maneuvers,
Jeez.
For 1951, that's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. Especially since, like, again, we go back to that thing where we're talking about how global communication wasn't what it is today in 1951. So you're talking about 1951 India,
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there'd been sort of like, 51. Yeah, the Roswell incident, right? It's already occurred?
47, yeah.
Right, yeah. So Roswell's already occurred.
Although
that sort of information travel in the 3-year time, probably. I mean, that's global news, but still,
I don't know if it would
not
be.
at that level,
Yeah, but I don't know, because the Roswell incident kind of
initially was kind of just shush.
It was totally shush. Like it was put out in the newspapers, the next day, but then the following day was the Jesse Marcel Jr. photo where he's holding up the weather balloon, and it's like, oh, it was just a weather balloon.
Just looking so sad.
Sorry that this guy who's the expert in the field didn't know the difference. It's just so sad that they screwed the guy like that. But anyway, yeah, I think it was kind of like put undercover. So,
So fair to say this 1951 India
probably
event
didn't know.
Wasn't like a copycat.
No.
In so many ways, it doesn't even descriptively sound like one at all either.
No, not at all.
The event is much different.
I kind of actually think that these ghost ships or ghost rockets, I kind of think that they actually may have been like a human-based thing. Because for all accounts and purposes, like I think the majority.
You're talking about the one in 2004? What do you?
No. I'm going back to the 50s. I'm talking.
Okay,
about,
gotcha.
Yeah, the New Delhi incident. Those like ghost ships or ghost rockets, a lot of times like you do see like some type of like propulsion, almost like a combustion engine type situation where it's coming out the back. So I kind of think that was probably sort of whatever the like black budget or whatever advanced aircraft was happening. But I kind of do lead to think that it was like a human thing. Kind of like the breakaway civilization, like the airship era, that we've discussed.
And that's it definitely could be. Truth be told, I didn't look too far into, what the aerospace engineering department at that time, their capabilities, and realistically, like how long it took India, for example, to have their own stuff going on. Okay, I've got one here, a couple actually. Well, first, it's kind of cool. There are some UFO investigators in India that are extremely active, and they kind of go in and just like UFO investigations here, like MUFON.
Yep.
These are organizations that aren't designed to disprove or necessarily prove. They're reporting these events, they're getting the details, and they're having the difficult job of sorting through the BS and finding the real stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. So everyone picture this. It's the stroke of midnight. Everyone's asleep. A lady named Sunita Yadav awoke to a levitating alien. She watched petrified as it hovered 1 foot above the ground just behind her home. Standing over 4 feet tall with gray skin and big black eyes, it proceeded from the Yadav's backyard toward their front door before, as her son Hitesh remembers, quote, it just vanished. In the 15 years since, the humanoid has made numerous other appearances around the Western Command Hospital in Panchakula, which is about 10 kilometers away from Chandigarh. And for our U.S. listeners, about 6.2 miles away, okay?
Nice.
It's now a mascot. Residents in the area believe it's lucky to spot it, says one guy.
Whoa,
his name is Hitesh. Cool. Yeah. In their sketch, the alien looks like a swarthy dwarf. But Hitesh remains convinced that what he saw was an extraterrestrial, and he spends much of his free time trying to prove it. He runs the bi-monthly e-zine UFO Magazine India and is the developer of the ufology app and founder of Disclosure Team India. And this was set up in 2016. So basically, this happened kind of close to that 2004 incident. And it's interesting, too, because so many times with alien cases and stuff, we always think of, when we think of like Little Gray or Grays, you know, a gray man, a gray-looking alien with black eyes.
Oh, yeah.
I think now, kind of after going through so many different types of incidents and the possibility that it could be a material, it could be a suit, it could be metal, it could be a robot, you know? Like, I never thought of that as a kid, like gray, meaning, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the color of their skin, you know?
Well, I think, I mean, I would almost say that the majority of that is coming from, you know, sort of the Whitley Strieber communion, probably just sort of a modern age abduction type, you know, visage or whatever. But it is funny that you brought up this like little man, because this is something that I want to cover in the future. In doing this research, like I have started, well, I mean, and past research for past shows and stuff, but there is this weird, like, sort of theme of these, like, little, almost like dwarven, like little tiny men in, like, kind of like what Woody said, these, like, almost like wetsuits or like a one piece or like even like metallic armor, you know, dating from like the 20s up until like the 70s. And it's funny because like a lot of these, you know, it's not really, I mean, the one that you just said is definitely the stereotypical like alien gray, the big black eyes. But before that kind of became like the, you know, in the zeitgeist of like what we think of as an alien, people were seeing these like sort of swarthy, like very tan looking like dwarves. And they're also known for like being able to float. They're known for, you know, flying up to this ship that's kind of like waiting for them in the clouds. There's a common thing where they're seen like going into mountains, which, I mean, if we know about dwarves, that's a common thing. And what's funny is like if you look actually into the like some of like the Indian like history, like ancient kind of history, a lot of their folklore and stuff does revolve around these like these dwarves kind of like living in the mountains, living in this like sort of inner earth, which is pretty fascinating. It kind of leads me to this next one that I have, which is, it's often called Kolkata's Morning Visitor. It says a resident east of Kolkata captured an unidentified flying object on camera in the early morning of Monday, October 29th. This marked the first such incident recorded in the city, with the object seen rapidly changing its shape and size. That sounds familiar. Scientists were unable to identify the object, although some speculated it could be a meteor. Observers saw the object alter its shape from a round object to a triangle, and then into a straight line. It emitted a bright light that formed a halo and radiated various colors. The sighting caused a frenzy among locals, with many gathering to catch a glimpse of the UFO. Isn't that cool?
Man.
And that was in 2007.
Dude. There's also one that talks about like a spiral pattern UFO.
Cool.
And this is around New Delhi also. And let's see, hold on. I think this happened... Oh, it just says New Delhi. People from various regions, including the Southwest United States, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe, witnessed an unidentified flying object mysteriously move overhead in a spiral pattern on Thursday evening. Footage of the sighting was shared on social media platforms. So there's all this kind of stuff that is still ongoing. Now, one area that I just want to mention this because I think obviously today, and sorry to disappoint, we're not going to get into the Himalayan Yeti.
True, that's right.
But I got a little small, short story that is pretty wild. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share it because here's the reason why I want to. This happened in August of 2002. So I found this article on, the magazine Outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's an outdoorsy magazine. Typically, you're not going to...
paranormal.
Not paranormal. Yeah. Just interesting. Mm-hmm. So, something evil roamed the sky over Uttar Pradesh, India, in August of 2002. Witnesses said the beast, which looked like a giant insect with steel claws, attacked from a swirling beam of red and green light.
What?
Raking the flesh off of people's faces. Over about a month, 70 victims came forward with burn wounds. More than a dozen people were killed in the riots and lynchings that followed these attacks of the Muknakwa, I guess is what I'm not sure if I pronounced that right.
Probably not.
Though all manner of descriptions and theories were kind of thrown about, no one could say what the, quote, face scratcher was. But it had been filmed. One video allegedly showed people running in horror from a beam of light spinning furiously over darkened streets. According to the Times of India, a team of investigators on the scene of one attack did not rule out the possibility of the presence of an extraterrestrial body with electromagnetic effect. The article goes on to say, was it alien? Or had agents from arch rival Pakistan unleashed a hysteria-inducing genetic experiment on the people of India? The Indian Air Force was enlisted to track the Muknakwa via radar. But holy tantrics claimed it was just another angry spirit and needed prayer and sacrifices to be pacified. Professor Ravindra Arora of the cool last name of the Indian Institute of Technology theorized that the phenomenon was nothing more than instances of instances of ball lightning resulting from the severe dryness of local drought.
Come on.
Tennessee Department of Health epidemiologist Timothy F. Jones, an expert on the psychology of populations, says supposedly supernatural occurrences like this may seem like ridiculous hoaxes, but for people under the spell, it's very real and terrifying. In the case of the Muknakwa, however, Jones believes a potent mix of imagination and fear just drove folks a little crazy. And he is saying this is mass hysteria, essentially, which might explain what they deemed the Monkey Man, an ape-like abomination that had people in New Delhi jumping to their deaths 2 years before. So in the year 2000, there was this Monkey Man sighting that made people just jump to their deaths. Okay,
are we thinking like...
He also says in Nigeria's genital thief scare of 1990.
What?
Yeah. Here's the thing.
Ouch.
In just a second, I was going to say, or El Chupacabra, right? Okay, we got things like Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the Yeti. We've got all this. Poor Nigeria has got a gosh darn
genital thief.
We've got these cryptid creatures that, yes, they're terrifying, but they got a genital thief?
Yikes.
I mean, that's next level, dude.
Oof.
No, I'm not going to, I don't want that to be a movie.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Okay,
so...
Whoa.
Okay, go.
I forgot. This is the best part. You know what they nicknamed this sort of insect-like, with steel claws, giant thing that like swirled around and scratched their faces? They call them Scratchy.
Scratchy. Wow.
Anyways, I thought that was wild.
Yeah, that is wild. I also think that, I don't know. I mean, if you're a longtime listener, you've also heard this, but like we think like the mass hysteria sort of, solution is just, it's kind of BS. Also, I think it really, it kind of like...
Well, when used in this way, when used in this way, it's BS. Sure, mass hysteria can exist. But
I think if you're seeing something, that's one thing. But if there's accounts of like a giant insect with steel claws scratching people's faces, I'm pretty sure you're not going to like mistake that for like the wind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. They're coming after us.
Anyway,
I thought that was wild, man. I think that, well, and not too long ago, there were some sightings of, and this is what I thought you were talking about, I think when you brought this up, either last episode or even just in conversation that we've had before. I thought you were referring, when you said humanoid UFO, I thought you were referring to this sighting of some dude that is basically made a homemade Iron Man type suit that's just flying around, like planes are like taking off in LA.
I saw that. Yeah.
And they're just like, this guy or gal or person, whatever, creature, UFO, is flying around. People can see them from their flight.
Yeah, dude.
And they'll just be like floating by and then just fly off.
So this was like a few years ago. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I thought this was the coolest thing. And it is
Elon Musk.
I mean, you never know. It could be. No. The flying humanoids are, it's weird because I don't typically think of this, but you can kind of imagine, like, so when we say flying humanoid UFOs, we're kind of talking about like, technically like Mothman would fall in.
Yeah, when you use the term humanoid, it really does get kind of broad.
Yeah. Oh man, dude. So I just happened to look this up. This is actually kind of funny. So this Monkey Man encounter that you're talking about, and we're not driving too far away from the dock.
Which one? Yeah, the Monkey Man is not the Scratcher. It's the one that happened like the year before, the 2001. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does take place in New Delhi, India, where that 1951 UFO account, it says eyewitness accounts were often inconsistent, but usually described the creature as about 4 feet. There's that little guy again, covered in thick black hair with a metal helmet, metal claws, glowing red eyes, and 3 buttons on its chest. Some reports also claim that it wore roller skates. Others, however, described the Monkey Man as having a more vulpine snout and being up to 8 feet tall and muscular.
Wow.
It would leap from building to building. Over 350 sightings of the Monkey Man were reported, as well as around 60 resulting in injuries. Police released artist sketches of eyewitnesses' accounts in an attempt to catch the creature. 2 or 3 people reportedly even died when they fell from the tops of buildings or down stairwells in panic caused by what they thought they were under attack. Dude, that's crazy.
Man.
It's like the Predator.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's exactly what I was visualizing when you were talking about it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. There's all this kind of stuff. And on top of it, genital thief.
And he's stealing people's genitals. Oh my God.
It also kind of reminded me of these, you remember, like, I don't remember if it was last summer, a year ago, time just basically is mixed into one giant thing now.
Yeah.
Since we've been time traveling. I guess we can say that out loud now.
Yeah.
Tyler and I invented time travel.
We did.
No, it kind of reminded me of, remember those like, allegedly, I think this was Brazil. It could have been somewhere, it was sort of a tropical location if memory serves. But there were like these thieves that had jetpacks.
Oh, yeah, dude.
You know what you remember what I'm talking about?
I think it was,
That's kind of sometimes what I think of. Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of what all of this kind of starts seeming like that.
It is interesting.
You know, now going back to what started and kicked this whole sort of inspired us for this episode, this 2004 humanoid UFO, balloon UFO, you can kind of find it listed and described or titled in a lot of different ways. And the important thing is that it's 2004 India, you'll find it.
Yeah, right.
When you're looking at this picture, there's something else that it reminds me of, dude. And I'm really surprised that you haven't brought it up. But it reminds me a lot of something that you sent me a picture of long, long ago. And that's the, I forget what it's called, so I'm probably going to say it wrong, but you'll know what I'm talking about in a second. And that's like the Dark Watcher.
The Dark Watcher?
Or like, you know, the thing that's like floating in space.
Oh, you mean the Black Knight satellite?
That's exactly what I said. It's weird that you thought I said something else just then. That is what I said. It rhymes with Dark Watcher.
Yeah.
That might have been what you heard, but what I said
on.
was the Black Knight satellite.
Dead on. You nailed it. Yeah, I could see that. And that, I mean, that's definitely an episode of its own.
Like, was the Dark Knight satellite coming down to just recharge? Was it another version of it, a 2.1?
I mean, could be.
Or 1.0 in the Dark Knight Watch. Or I already messed it up.
Maybe that's where all these like jet-packed men are coming from.
Yeah. So to me, again, kind of just to specifically on this sort of area, the thing that sort of I can't stop thinking about is it's either an area where there is a high concentration of strange events, which could be, or another possibility is that, you know, for whatever reason, different governments are experimenting with different things in remote locations and they just happen to have been sort of caught in the act. That's a possibility. Or there are other things inside these mountains that over time people have observed and those either government agencies or organizations of any kind are trying to figure things out and trying to find, you know, whether it's Yeti, whether it's maybe downed aircraft that are in the area. Maybe they're testing out some of the reverse engineered technology that they've gained from these downed aircraft. Or maybe there's some sort of portal or hole into, like you said, at some point, Middle Earth or something, where a lot of these creatures, this is just an area where they can come out.
Yeah, for sure. Like almost like a window area, but like the most powerful because it's in this, I don't know, for some reason it just seems like it would be a lot more potent being on this like sort of holy mountain range. Also, I think it was interesting, something that you mentioned earlier when you were talking about, what was her name? She had a cool name. Her last name was Aurora.
Yeah, it was a guy, but okay.
Oh, I thought it was a girl. Huh. Maybe not.
Yeah, Professor, oh wait, well, we don't know. Ravindra Aurora.
I think that's a girl. I like that name. I'm definitely going to use it.
It's a dude.
Oh, it is a dude. Yeah, but something that they said where they were talking about, we just have to have...
Sorry, I'm so sorry. But just that whole exchange reminds me of when someone asked Liam Gallagher what his thoughts about Kanye West was, and he's like, never heard of her. Funniest thing ever. Keep going, sorry.
That is funny. My favorite thing is his, the interview where it's like him and a class full of kids.
Oh, yeah. Incredible. God.
Dude, he's like, when he's talking about, they're like, oh, I know who your brother is. He says, I had a brother, and they're like, we know who your brother is. His name's Noel. And Liam's like, he's a naughty boy. And then he's like, he has the same size shoe as you have.
Oh, man.
No, but it's when they, Ravindra Aurora, they mentioned like, oh, well, it's just, you know, this thing that's appearing is you know, it just means that there needs to be a sacrifice laid out. And it's like, is that what that lake is all about?
Yeah, Rupkund Lake. Is that what's going on? You know, we kind of sort of alluded to that being one of our theories about that lake in the last episode, where is there some sort of event that's occurring that we don't know about, you know? And then, gosh, after sort of reading several volumes of the manga Berserk, to be honest with you, that's kind of where I was thinking that's kind of what I was thinking was happening with that lake as well. Is this some sort of like almost sacrificial ground that we don't know about this ceremony. It's beyond sort of human interaction. It just so happens that humans were the victims.
Yeah.
But it's beyond like our scope. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, and there's a couple more, as we're kind of wrapping up here. There's one called the Ladakh phenomenon that happened in 2012. The Indian Army and Border Police was sent out. There were over 100 reports and sightings of UFOs in the Ladakh region of Jammu and Kashmir between August and October. Observers described the objects as yellowish spheres that rose from the Chinese side out of the mountain, traversed the sky for several hours, and then disappeared. Despite investigations involving ground-based radar, spectrum analyzers, and reconnaissance drones, the objects remain unidentified. Astronomers from the Indian Astronomical Observatory could not conclusively establish what the objects were, but ruled out all celestial bodies like meteors and planets, blah, blah, blah. There's another one called the Chennai's Orange Lights in 2013. Residents of Mogappaiyar, Chennai, observed 5 specks of bright orange light moving from south to north on Thursday night. This is in 2013. The lights appeared in groups of 5 and vanished after a few seconds. The spectacle was silent and the objects were flying at higher altitude than an airplane. P. Liam Perumal, the executive director of the Tamil Nadu Science and Technology Center, suggested that the lights could be meteor showers, although the typical season for such showers is in November and December. There's another one called Lucknow's Sunset Spectacle in 2014. A Lucknow resident, Amit Tripathi, captured images of a mysterious object flying in the sky while he was photographing the sunset. The object, which began spinning and ascending before disappearing within 40 seconds, has sparked discussions about the possibility of it being a UFO. The sighting followed similar reports from residents in Guwahati, Shamli, and Tundla earlier in the same month. The last one is, the last one that I have is February 25th, 2021. Residents of Ludhiana, Punjab, reported seeing a shiny UFO in the sky. Someone captured the object on video, shared it on social media, and it emitted bright lights as it moved across the night sky. Some speculated it could be a meteor, others suggested it may be an aircraft. However, no concrete evidence was provided to support these claims, leaving the nature of the object a mystery. So India is kind of ripe with these, sort of anomalous, encounters in the sky or events in the sky, which is pretty cool.
It's very cool. One thing that I think we should talk about, because again, on our show, we talk often about our appreciation and really fascination with other, not just cultures, but also like spiritual beliefs, religions, all that kind of stuff. Well, as everybody knows, since we're in the region, India, there's a high population of, Hinduism. And I don't know why, but I was just thinking, like when you look at the imagery of, Hindu beliefs and the writings and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot more obviously sort of, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking like, fantastical. I mean, versus sort of like, Judeo-Christian sort of traditional depictions or whatever. And same with things like, Greek, ancient Greek.
Well, they were all Nephilim,
Roman. And so like, and I'm saying like, it's interesting though, that an area like this, that was an area of, in a lot of ways, very intellectually advanced in ancient times. I'm just saying like in terms of like written language, being able to document historically and all this in comparison to other parts of the world, they had that ability and we were able to kind of like reach really far back into their stuff,
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because, maybe it feels like a stretch, but it seems like there's a connection here where we've got an area of the world that's got a lot of these events, a lot of these creatures, a lot of these things happening. And then at the same time, you go back and you look at some of these I guess, depictions of their gods and things that they talk about. And you're like, huh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that was one of the things that was appealing to me with this episode, which I think we may break down a little further in the Patreon. But what Woody's talking about is like, so they're sort of manuscripts of this area, or like sort of holy books, are called Vedas. And if that sounds familiar, you may have heard the term like Vedic astrology. But like the things that Woody's referring to are these things called Vimanas, which are, it's kind of interesting because there's sort of different definitions for this word, which is like, some is like holy temple or palace, and then also like a flying machine. And these flying machines are really like common in these ancient Indian texts. They were used in like their warfare. They were able to fly within Earth's atmosphere. They were able to travel into space and underwater. The sun and Indra and several other Vedic deities were transported by flying wheeled chariots pulled by animals, usually horses, but others like the Agnihotra Vimana. Agni means fire, with 2 engines, and Gaja Vimani, elephant-powered, were known.
Whoa.
Which is
Now
cool,
we're talking. That's awesome.
Rig Veda also talks of mechanical birds. Later texts around 500 BC talk of self-moving aerial car without animals.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, dude.
500 BC.
Yeah.
We're talking about machines.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because once you get into this, and like I said, we're probably gonna get into it a little heavy on the Patreon. If you're not a member of the Patreon, but you want to hear this, let us know, and we may keep it on the main feed, because it is, I mean, India is so fascinating as far as its like ancient culture. I mean, it gets into these Vimanas, and it talks about like, I mean, it gets like pretty specific into like the making of them. It talks about how they were sort of constructed, and a lot of like scholars believe that they're talking about agitated mercury, or like like spinning mercury, and being able to kind of like bypass the laws of gravity. And it's pretty crazy, like, and pretty like fascinating. And they also talk about these like weapons. So like, for example, the propulsion of the Vimanas, according to Kanjilal, wrote a book in 1985 called Mercury Vortex Engines. Apparently a concept similar to electric propulsion, where they talk about, they're just kind of like, it's like this spinning mercury kind of thing, and they're able to like, basically levitate, or they don't need like a combustion engine, like a rocket, basically. But they had these weapons on them which this is like fascinating, but these weapons are known to have the power to like make people's like hair fall out and their nails fall off, which sounds a lot like radiation poisoning.
Yeah,
it talks about how the soldiers that were in the area would run into the streams to like wash themselves off as they were panicking. The interesting thing about this is, when we think of like technology, we think like, oh, well, it's all just like very scientific, very, right brain, very whatever. But one of the things that's cool, that I think is cool about this, is that when they talk about like the Vimanas, it talks about there's like a system that they call the Laghima, which is the unknown power of man's ego. And they say it's a centrifugal force strong enough to counter the gravitational pull, which is where you kind of get the Hindu, like the yogis, and they maintain that the Laghima enables a person to levitate. And so like, basically when they're in these vehicles, if they're sort of enlightened beings, they're able to like sort of magnify that or amplify that power in these Vimanas, and they're able to like, whereas like in the real world, they would be able to like levitate a few feet. Being in these ships and having like the sort of propulsion systems, maybe that like ego, that sort of psi ability, latent psi ability, it's magnified, so they're able to like fly these like spaceships basically, which is really cool.
That is so cool. And see, like, I didn't even know that you were going to dive into that thing. I just thought, like, man, this is a place where it's rich in this sort of colorful, in sort of like the Western view, or I guess perspective. It's a lot more, well, I mean, I hate to say the word fantastical because that I definitely don't mean it to be in a demeaning way. Just that it's so far removed from sort of the Christian belief system and all of these different vehicles that you're talking about and everything. Yeah. Yes, we have to talk about this more on the Patreon, unless listeners now, well, no, not unless. Join the Patreon if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. What a cool place. And as you guys can see, one sort of idea or one event can lead to opening up a dialogue about so many different things, and this is the perfect example. So thank you so much for listening and sort of, sticking with us throughout today's episode and this little ride we put together for you.
Yeah, I mean, just when we thought we were leaving the Himalayas, we get pulled back in.
Exactly.
If you would like to find us, go join us on Instagram. Leave a comment. If you have your own story, shoot us a DM. If it's more of a long form type situation, maybe you're telling us about your own local sort of legend or urban legend, or you've had your own sort of paranormal encounter, and you want to tell us about it, shoot it to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com, or even better, if you're brave and you want to tell your story to be possibly featured on an upcoming episode, you can do so over at thatwouldberadpodcast.com, where you can basically leave your own little voice memo. We'll put some cool background music, we'll edit it, we'll make it sound great, and you can become part of That Would Be Rad history like many others have thus far. We really love that stuff, especially Woody and I are lifelong big fans of like folklore and sort of like the very localized folklore that may not make it onto like the internet or, those kind of things that are like only in this like, oh, well, it's, there's this like, sightings of the Panther Lady on like in our town on this one road, like stuff like that is the stuff that it's amazing. We love that stuff.
Best, yeah.
If you would like to support the show, the best way to do that is over on the Patreon. You can join us in the rabbit trail where, it's more of what you love. It's a little looser, a little goosier. It's recorded later at night. And it really means a lot to us and it helps keep the train on the tracks. We do have some merch stuff coming up. We're just gearing up for spooky season. We're almost there. And we're psyched about it. You got anything else, Woody?
I think that's it, man.
Right on. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. Time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead, for you became a ghost. You always said our future future would be a parade of flowers. But now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.
Access granted.
What about, hold on, let me look this up. Okay. Where is it at? Well, I can't find it. Good. Yes.